You recently wrapped principal photography on Suspension of Disbelief, your latest film. What is the elevator pitch for the film, and what phase in the process are you at, and what do you need to do to get to picture lock?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Suspension of Disbelief is a drama inspired by Hamlet that follows Vianna, this young woman who, haunted by an ambiguous past relationship, finds herself repeatedly drawn to a small theater production of Hamlet, where the blurred lines between performance and reality force her to confront the emotional truth she's long avoided. And at its core, it's really a film about unresolved emotion and that sort of emotional residue of ambiguous relationships versus authenticity, right? I decided to just wrap production for it. I've had some people reach out wanting to edit it, and so we have locked some people who are going to be working in post. So our composer, looking at some colorists and finalizing, hoping to lock in our editor this week. What we need to get a picture lock at this point is really the funding. We're very lucky to have the community really show out for this film in many ways, both through our GoFundMe and the fundraising event we hosted at Lincoln Park Room.
Mhm.
And that amount that we're able to raise in a very grassroots way got us as far as actually completing production. But it was not enough to get us to post, as well as compensating our cast and crew who, for as of right now, have been working completely on a volunteer basis just because they believe in the story so much, which I'm so thankful for and really touched me.
Great. Are you continuing your GoFundMe campaign, or are you doing something separate, or are you just asking people to visit
Yeah,
something?
we're continuing our GoFundMe campaign for now, and then
Okay.
I'm also been making a list of potential investors. Something that was really cool with this film was my storytelling journey kind of began through theater. I was a theater kid growing up, and so it was cool to kind of honor both of these mediums in this film, especially a film about like in between things and duality. It was cool to kind of blend the two mediums in a way.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare was something that I've always been so um, resistant to just because that kind of text, I'm not from the US. And so having English as a second language, it really made that text feel so heavy and distant. And so it was a way of making something that was so foreign accessible. And so, with Shakespeare, there are a lot of societies that are a fan of, the Bard's work and try to connect that to a different generation, to different publics. And so, like, trying to reach out, theater producers, film producers, as well as Shakespeare fans who have the means to support independent filmmaking at this capacity. That's kind of what I wanted to do with the movie. Is it's interesting it's a commentary on modern dating and those ambiguous relationships. The fact that we had to coin the term situationship just because of how present that is in today's society, that people like it's so frequent, people need an actual word to make sense of it,
Right.
right? And so it feels so new, but then you look at the dynamic between Hamlet and Ophelia, and that has been going on since the Elizabethan time. And then you even look at the Renaissance and how that was inspired by the Greeks and the Romans. So like a lot of our patterns of human behavior have going on forever. And so to finding where we're similar in those ways, even regardless of culture and time, I think was really interesting to play in this film. And
Excellent.
it really made me like appreciate Shakespeare's work to a different level, uh, because of how timeless it is. I remember talking to a dramaturg, and she mentioned how, like today, Shakespeare is really, or Hamlet specifically, is talked about as a play that feels so contemporary, despite being Shakespeare. But at the time when Shakespeare like put it together as a production, it was actually really popular for its retro quality. And so Shakespeare's ways of like navigating time and space and community within his work is fascinating to me. And so to get to honor a little bit of that through this film has been very rewarding.
Very cool. Very cool. What atmosphere do you feel most comfortable with when you are running a set as a director? How do you think it is most conducive to creativity within that atmosphere?
I've always considered myself a very collaborative director. I think what originally attracted me to filmmaking as a medium for art was specifically the collaborative nature of it that's like intrinsic to the art form, right? Like it's with certain, with visual fine art, I can just pick up a pencil and do something myself, but filmmaking as an art form is inherently collaborative. And so in that way, kind of foster an environment where each perspective gets heard and incorporated, I think um, adds complexity to a film and to a work that's organic. It just happens because of the intention and the group of people with different experiences putting their artistic input and skill and time and experiences into it. And trust, which is everyone talks about trust in filmmaking, but I think, back when I was doing my first films, I came from storytelling or from theater and writing, and so I think a lot of the way I directed had to do more with that and less with the technical aspects of it.
Right.
And so I felt a little bit insecure about it, and I think in the beginning of my journey, sometimes I was taken advantage of, and I felt like I needed to, make myself smaller to even because I had so much imposter syndrome that I was going through, that's not a space that I was told I could be in. So I felt like you're lucky enough that you're getting to direct something to shut up. They're probably right. Let them do their thing. And this last set, there was a moment where I was looking at frame and I was like, okay, that works. And then the DP turned to me and said, does that work or is that what you want? Or is that the vision? And so to be given that space, to be kind of called in that way to like make sure, and so having that space and being held in that way meant a lot to me, and I think made for us to be able to tell the story in a way that I think we wouldn't be otherwise. Especially because I think with this I mean, with any work I create, but with this film specifically, it's really about all those like intangibles in between gray area spaces we don't know what to do with, right? Like that's kind of how I started writing the script. I just needed to process something, and I had all these feelings I didn't know where to put and where to place. Um, and people, we get in this habit of like invalidating our own feelings, and so when you make them real and you put them into a piece of work, there, it's right there. You can't see it. It's harder to create a narrative against yourself. But to bring those intangible feelings to something that's like visual and like you can hear and you can see and make it real, um, that truly requires a certain level of not only the skill technically, but I think also a connection to the material and a connection to the psyche of the main character and the story that is only possible to actually get translated if you have that kind of atmosphere of collaboration and trust, because a lot of those things are personal. And so I think that's for me really important.
The term suspension of disbelief is a rule for the audience. In trying to create authenticity in your stories, what do you believe is the greatest storytelling enemy that prevents the suspension of disbelief?
I think honestly, it always comes back to trust and vulnerability for me, if I'm really like thinking about it, because you know, we build a walls when we start feeling vulnerable and exposed, and I feel like art has a really good way of doing that. Um, and I think you have to kind of have a trust for the filmmaker that um, I think I mean, we talk about filmmaking and art a lot of to the time and languages of like escapism or even like voyeurism a little bit.
Yeah,
And so we project those feelings, and that kind of gets reflected back onto us as we consume that.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Boy, God, you and I
right.
have
And
very
so,
similar philosophies about film. That's beautiful.
oh, it's amazing.
I love it.
And so, like think about when you create a relationship with anybody, like a friend or a lover, when you give your heart or those feelings to them, you hope they'll take care of it,
Right,
right? Like you hope that they'll, because it's all of you that you're giving to them, even if for that like, if it's a 10-minute film or a 1 hour film. And so if we don't trust the filmmaker or the artist or the storyteller in taking care of our feelings, we kind of already start in the defensive, and we can't suspend our disbelief in that way.
right,
We start trying to find, rationalize everything, which is, against with what the what the medium is proposing to you in that moment. And so I think it comes to trust. We don't trust, and because we don't trust, we aren't, we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to really immerse ourselves in that work.
So you get your inspiration from your Latina roots and the depth of perspective that comes from going from a homeland and establishing a new homeland in the United States. Where do you see that most in suspension of disbelief, either in the story or one of the characters?
Mm. Mm. I see it in a couple ways. Something that immediately comes to mind. I don't know if you've seen Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
I have.
And I remember seeing an interview where he was talking about how that's a very European story told in a very Latin American way. And I feel
Interesting.
like, yes, I see my work in a similar way where, I'm Brazilian and I come from a country where we're very passionate in many ways, and we're known for that passion, and we're known for the this attitude of celebrating life regardless of what is presenting to you at the time. And we're a country also that's very mixed ethnically as well. And so in our nature, there's this intrinsic nature of embracing different perspectives and nuances and more than one thing being true at once. And for me, again, changing homelands, you kind of already inserting yourself, and because I came here younger at 15, you're ready to kind of become what people say it's living in the hyphen. It's constantly living at the intersection of all of your identities because your experience is already split. And I think in suspensive disbelief, navigating those like in between spaces, those gray areas, I think it shows up a lot in that way.
Hmm,
Um, I think that's like huge. So
sure.
I think yeah, the depth of emotion, and then I think those in between, being comfortable in being in that uncomfortable space of not having a black and white, of not having, because we think in narratives, right? Like
Right.
even how we understand each other through our tradition, which became literature and film.
Right.
And so you have good and evil, and you have the villain, and you have the good guy, and life just isn't like that. And so when we have those really confusing feelings and we can't put them in like little boxes and categories, we go insane. And I think coming from where I come from, we just learn to kind of embrace that ambiguity, that duality a little bit more. And I try to incorporate that into my films.
Excellent.
Um, so I think that's how it shows up in this one specifically.
Perfect. Final question. What is the first thing you think about when you think about your love for cinematic storytelling? And how do you use it in your productions?
I think that um, having a space where feelings and our experiences as humans are kept safe and they're honored. Um, I am chronic overthinker. I'm always like,
I don't believe that for a second.
always like second doubting my like experiences of things, and like if it's a relationship kind of thing, friendship or otherwise, it's
Right.
if that person's experience is different than mine, was mine even valid? Is mine even real? Like, and then again, what do
Interesting.
I do with all this?
Right.
Like I think we're on autopilot a lot of the time as we go through our lives, and we're not encouraged to just sit with our feelings. You either overanalyze them or you like push them
Push
down
them
and keep
aside. Yeah.
going. And I found that eventually that will come up to the surface. And I found that for me, the moments where that happen, it's like coming home from something and I'm listening to some music, and I'm not paying attention. I start paying attention to the lyrics, and it's something that resonates with something I'm going through, and I just start bawling. When I'm watching a film and I'm laughing hysterically. And so I think, or watching a play. So I think uh, it's that moment where it's like you're engaging with people, um, and yeah, and being there in a safe space, having the space to be vulnerable without being looked at, right? Like the actors take that brunt for us.
Mhm.
And I think whatever the medium is, it does the same thing. So I think having a space to be held in a way that we're not accustomed to, in like this very fast-paced way that we live.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.